Okay.
And joining us now is the new head coach at Hofstra. Of course, she was an alum, one of the great players, two-way players in the history of Hofstra, and she's back at Hofstra to take over the program. I speak of Adrienne Clark, who joins us here now on In the Circle. And first, coach, congrats. How does it feel to be back?
It feels awesome. I'm really excited, and this was sort of an opportunity that I just couldn't turn down.
Well, just tell us about the process and how it all worked out. Obviously, we'll talk about your journey. You've been an assistant at different places. I mean, obviously, you have the ties here to Hofstra. That had to be a big influence, but were you always looking forward to being a head coach, or was this something that just kind of popped up as a head coaching idea? What was kind of the process like for you?
Yeah, no, the process for me was that I wanted to be a head coach. That was definitely always part of the plan. Even leading up to, getting here, and the jobs that I took were very strategic, to hopefully put me in a position to become a head coach one day. So it was all part of the plan.
I was curious, did you talk to your old coach, Bill Edwards, as this was going on for his input on that? Was he, type of deal? Because obviously you played for him, you know this program inside out, but you still want to check the boxes and everything about everything that's going on since the last time you stepped on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. I have spoken to Bill. He's always been an incredible resource for me throughout my coaching stops. And so, yeah, of course, he was part of the process, and he definitely has a wealth of knowledge that, still I learn new things from him. And it always impresses me because I feel like the man kind of knows a little bit of everything.
That's pretty accurate there. Uh, what was it like when you talk to your new players that you're inheriting and they get to know you? What has that process been like? I know it's still ongoing, but what has that been like in the early going?
Yeah, it's been great. I made sure, a top priority for me was connecting with every player individually, having a conversation and getting to know them as people, right? I think that in the best way to develop relationships is to get to know, how people operate, what's important to them. And so my conversations have been really wonderful. All of the players are eager to learn, eager to be developed, excited for what's to come, and already kind of have an understanding that I have an understanding of what it's like to be at Hofstra.
And that's a great point. How much do you bring up the past? You were part of the great run there. You were one win away from the World Series in '04 in Palo Alto. Among that great run, you're winning conference championship after championship. In fact, on the video, I could see you got a lot of trophies up there, very, very well placed. But how much of that do you bring up with the current players, the tradition that Hofstra softball is, because it is a big deal. But at the same time, you're also thinking about the present and the future of the players. How do you balance that?
Yeah, well, I think you balance it by making sure that the players are the priority. We're in this business to develop people and develop players and our student athletes. And, I wouldn't be in this opportunity or in this seat without them. So they truly are the priority. And I think as long as they are always the priority, there's the way to build in tradition to sort of, you know, um, get them to feel like they are the center, right? And then we build everything else into that. But I do believe it starts with them, and that they have to be the priority, in my opinion.
Let's kind of go back to your playing days. What drew you to come to play at Hofstra there? And part of this great dynasty run that Coach Edwards built there, I think you were part of that mix where it was in the mix of 11 straight conference championships, one of the most incredible accomplishments. What was it like for you to kind of commit and play there?
Yeah, my recruitment process was pretty unique. I grew up in Florida. I had already gone on some official visits to a couple of schools. Hofstra happened to see me play the weekend before early signing. So Coach Edwards called me on a Monday. I set up a visit for Friday. I flew home Saturday, made my decision Sunday, and signed Wednesday. So for me, it was a gut feeling that after I stepped on campus and meeting with Coach Edwards, it was what I knew to be the next opportunity for me. I had incredible parents that allowed and afforded me the opportunity to sort of like take the risk and go pretty far away from home. But it was honestly the best decision that I've ever made to date, with the development of the player that I became and the experience that I got.
You had an incredible career, and I mentioned your teams are incredible run there. The one that kind of stands out, you won, as a program, you won your first NCAA tournament games in '03, I believe,
Mhm.
which was your sophomore year. What do you remember about that? Because that sets up for a big year in the following year, which we'll get to. But that '03 U, that was a landmark to win an NCAA tournament games. Just tell us a little bit of it for those that may not be aware.
Yeah, so that was a really cool experience because it was also the first time we had gotten, I believe, an at-large bid, which at the time, not a lot of mid-majors, it's very difficult to do. We had played a pretty competitive beginning of the season. So I remember, and I talked about this story in a different article, but we ended up not watching the selection show as a team because Bill and Larissa just weren't quite sure like what was going to happen, right? And they didn't want to jinx it. So we as a team ended up getting together at one of our teammates' like apartment off campus. And when we saw that we had got announced, it was sort of this like overwhelming feeling. We were like, oh crap, like we did it. And so then we drove back to campus and we had like our windows down and we like were screaming out the window, like we're going. And it was just a really cool sort of like intimate, unexpected opportunity that sort of happened for us. And then getting to the regional, Bill and Larissa had prepared us that year. We started our season and they had put together our schedule. Well, when they gave us our schedule, they had all of our games listed with the times, but they listed every opponent as Bazooka State. So they came up with this fictional name named after the chewing gum. And their point was that it didn't matter who we were playing, where we were playing, what we were doing. It was all the same thing. It was just a game, and that's kind of how we approached that year. So going into regionals, we kind of felt like we should be there, right, and that we could compete with anyone. So Bazooka State it was.
That's an amazing story. I did not know that story. That's pretty remarkable. And for those that don't know, this was pre, super regional. So this was one regional. Winner goes to the World Series. You got your first win against Nebraska. Where was the regional at? Do you remember where was the regional host then back then?
So Nebraska was the host for that regional. And then the following year was Stanford, and the following year after that was Alabama.
Not easy places to play. But you got the first wins in '03, and then '04 was probably one of the more dramatic regionals, and certainly is really where your name kind of blew up in the national scene. I mean, you were tremendous drama there, extra inning games. You had beaten 12th ranked Auburn on the opening day of those regionals. You played a Southern Illinois team that went 12 innings and were making a deep run, but you had adversity during that regional because your ace pitcher, Callie Osborne, who was a pitcher of the year, I believe she got hurt with an injury, and you stepped up to the plate. Your number got called, and you kind of really got on a roll there. Talk about that experience. What was that like, where all of a sudden you're asked to carry the load here and step up, and you did more than that?
Yeah, I guess I don't really think about it as like any different than what my job was every day. And that was, what does the team need and where are we and what can I do to help the team, right? And that was kind of always the mentality. I signed as a utility player. A lot of people may or may not know this, but I actually played and could play every position on the field. My freshman year, I caught some and I played outfield, and it wasn't until later in my career that I became more of a starting pitcher. So when we were in that regional, it was, unfortunate that that we didn't have Callie, but we still had an incredible team. We had players that would knock balls down. Like our third baseman, still to this day, is one of the best third basemen that I've ever seen play the game. So when you have people behind you that make unbelievable plays on a regular basis and give max effort every single time they hit the field, it makes it easy to be able to do your part, right? And it's not any different than what I had done previously, whether I got an inning for a save or whether I actually started a game.
And you did that. I think you threw 31 straight innings without giving up an earned run in postseason in the NCAA, which is kind of remarkable. You end up losing to Stanford. That was a John Rittman-led team there, a very loaded Stanford team. What do you remember about that regional? One win away. I know painful, but still an incredible run for your team there.
Yeah, I mean, what I remember is that we like made noise and we put we put out we laid everything out on the field, right? And that's one thing that I think Hofstra has always kind of been known for, the alums that came before me and the players that have come after me. We played the game hard and we always hustled and we gave everything, we had every single day. And so that regional was honestly like one of the coolest experiences ever. Being able to be one game away from the World Series, especially in a 7-team regional. I mean, I think we were the 7 seed going into it, which the fact that we won a game was, a little unexpected by a lot. But it was an incredible experience and one that I, continue to carry with me to date.
Yeah, and that was a Stanford team that was led by Jessica Allister, who's also gone into coaching. I mean, something during that was a good regional if you wanted to be a future coach, head coach apparently. And you mentioned you played in Tuscaloosa, right? I mean, and you played at Alabama in 05. I believe that was the Van Brakel-led Alabama team, who's now obviously on the staff at Alabama. It's kind of a small world.
It was actually an even smaller world. I actually played a weekend of a travel ball tournament with Steph after my freshman year of college. So one of her, the team that she played for and the girls that she played with, one of her good friends was also my best friend in college, and their team was down some players. So over the summer, they asked if I wanted to play. So I went and played. So it was actually kind of cool. After the game, we have pictures with me, my friend Steph, and teammate, and Steph Van Brakel, Steph and Steph. So
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty remarkable. Your career comes to an end after 05, college career. You decide to get into coaching. What led into your decision to get into coaching, and then obviously a unique journey because you've coached around the country and you paid your dues to get to the point where you're at now, because you've coached all over the country with some big time programs and big time conferences.
Yeah. So I always knew I wanted to get into coaching. Softball and the sport itself has always sort of been a passion. I was the kid that was always in Bill and Larissa's office. I would oftentimes bring lunch from the CAF just to come sit and pick their brains about the game, about what we could do, but also about what they did and why they did what they did. For me, it was kind of something I always knew I wanted to do. So yeah, like it was an easy decision.
Yeah. You started at Delaware. You coached there from 06 to 09. Ironically, in the league there, you also made, I believe you coached at Columbia. You obviously most recently at Purdue. Just talk about each of the journeys. Connecticut, where I got to meet you there when you were coaching at UConn on the staff. Just talk about, because I would imagine you learned some things from each place that you were at that's gotten you to this point that you will apply here moving forward as a head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Each spot has been honestly an incredible experience that I have taken something from every spot into, this next role. When I first started coaching at Delaware, like any young coach, you're not really sure how to coach or what to do. And so you kind of go with what you know. And then through the process, you learn that there are other ways to do things, and you keep an open mind to sort of cultivating what you do know and improving it and making it better. When I went to Columbia, it was a really unique opportunity. The Ivy League is an incredible conference and in a really special place because of the value of where academics lie. That were different from me and different from what I knew up to that point. I learned more from those players, I think, than anything, because they taught me that not only how they excelled in the classroom, but also how they could excel on the field. I was lucky enough to get a master's degree from there while I was working there in sports management. And then, my next stops, I took a brief hiatus from coaching. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I started volunteering at Hofstra while I was training and competing in skeleton.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, yeah.
It's a Winter Olympic sport. And what was cool about that is I had the opportunity to come back to Hofstra and volunteer and work with Bill, Larissa, and Courtney. You know, and that was so cool because things had changed since I was here last. They had evolved, I had evolved, and now we had this like, I felt like a mastermind of like 4 different coaches that just wanted to be really good at our craft. So it was awesome to sort of cross that bridge from player Adrienne to coach Adrienne, and be seen as sort of like an equal to Bill and Larissa, which was a really cool experience. From there, I went to UConn. You know, Jen Mack was and is one of my biggest mentors and supporters to this day. She was one of the first people to call and tell me congrats and tell me you're going to be okay and you've got this, right? Like you've put the work in, you've learned, you've grown, you've evolved, and you're ready for this. So, but being able to work for her as a first-time head coach gave me a front row seat as to what that's going to be like when and if I were to become a head coach, right? From there, I got to go to Purdue. You know, one of the things that I felt like I needed experience or an opportunity to experience was what it was like to be in the Power Five. You know, I wanted to be able to round out my experience. The other thing is that when I was at UConn, I was working with pitching and catching, but when I transitioned to Purdue, I was in charge of defense and I assisted with hitting. That was also sort of strategic because I knew when and if I became a head coach, I wanted to have coached and been in charge of every facet of the game so that I can find the best people for my staff and build around that. So, you know, Coach Boo was amazing in giving me the opportunity to work with defense and assist Dorian with hitting. And that last experience really was kind of the culmination of kind of putting everything together and allowing me to be in a position to become a head coach.
I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to bring it up. Your unique journey, for those that may not be aware, you trained with the United States Bobsled and Skeleton Federation for 3 years, from 11 to 14, as you tried to qualify for the Olympics as a skeleton athlete. The obvious two-part question, the obvious question is, what got you interested in getting into being a skeleton athlete and trying to make the Olympics? How did that all come about? And just take us, what was it like for that process as you were trying to qualify for the Olympics? A fascinating kind of a unique journey. Like what motivated you to go in that route?
Yeah. So a little backstory. When I initially graduated from college in 05, I had moved home and I was trying to get a coaching job and wasn't sure what was going to happen if I didn't get one. So my dad had read this article and said, well, if you don't get a job, you should try bobsled. Like there's these former track stars and they tried bobsled and then there's like an opportunity. You've always said you wanted to go to the Olympics. And I was like, okay, Dad, yeah, like, okay, maybe. So I ended up getting a coaching job about 6 months after I graduated. And I honestly didn't think about it since until I was, I think in my first or second year at Columbia, and I happened to be going to visit my Nana in Georgia. And on the plane flight, I happened to sit next to Alana Myers Taylor now, but she played softball at George Washington University. And she, after she graduated, got into bobsled, and she had just come off competing in the 2010 games, and she had her bronze medal with her, and I got to hold it, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And then, you know, she was like, well, we're always recruiting. So I got off the plane flight and I called my dad. I said, Dad, you're never going to believe this. And he's like, what? I said, I mean, I just sat next to someone on a plane who does bobsled, played softball in college, and they're recruiting people. Like, I think I have to try this. I feel like it's fate. So I trained to get my body in shape and see if I could get my body where I, you know, knew it needed to be. And I did. And at that point, I just stepped down from my position at Columbia and decided to give it a whirl, take a risk.
That's unbelievable. You know, and we've seen athletes do this. I think there was like one in the 90s where I think Herschel Walker was trying for the bobsled team and things like that. So we've seen this before, but once you committed to it, Take me through the day. What's a daily routine? How do you prepare? And then, to try to get to qualify for the Olympics, there's obviously, is there a lot of stress involved? Is there pressure? How do you cope with all that? Like, what was that process like as you were going through that training each day?
Yeah. So I was living in Lake Placid at the training center. A typical day was get up, eat in the cafeteria. You do your strength training and then your speed training. And then you'd have lunch and then you'd go to the track and you'd get on average about 3 runs a day. Every run took less than a minute, give or take. So practice in theory was less than 3 minutes long. Um, and then you'd head back for dinner. So the easiest way to describe what that experience was like is kind of being in college playing a sport, but without the classes. So your emphasis, your time, your energy, everything is being put into training your body, training your mind, and really just trying to get an understanding of the sport. A lot of the prep work for training happened virtually. So you'd lay on your sled, you would put your computer in front of you and watch a point of view video of someone going down the track as you're like practicing your movements, right? So that when you would go to sort of apply it, you learned, and the repetitions, whether virtually or physically, were sort of preparing you to be faster going down the track. So that's kind of what a typical day looked like. The pressure, the intensity, it was so much different because the actual amount of time of doing the sport itself was so minuscule, and you also couldn't slow it down. So like where in our sport I can slow the swing down, I can break it up into chunks, or even the pitching motion. Every run that you took was from top to bottom. There are no breaks, so you don't slow down until you get to the bottom of the track, and the bottom of the track goes uphill. So you could never break it up into chunks, right? As soon as you started, you had to finish, right? There was no like, oh, let me redo this part, right? Like you got your 3 runs and you had to finish it, even though you were focusing maybe on a certain segment. So it was very fast paced and very intense, but a really incredible experience.
That's remarkable. Obviously, trying to make it to Sochi. What goes through your mind when those Olympics pop up? Maybe starting with that Sochi Olympics, and then future Olympics moving forward. Do you think about that experience every time it pops up?
Yeah, totally, right? And then, I got to know different athletes through the process and train alongside different ones. And so, yeah, every time the Winter Olympics come up, I'm glued to the TV. I have to watch like bobsled, skeleton, and luge. Like those are non-negotiables for me. Um, so yeah.
That's pretty good. You could be like an analyst, right? Like you could probably be a guest analyst there on a broadcast or something like that, or just break it down what's going on. Where a lot of people are trying to figure out what's going on, you probably know what's going on inside out.
I'd like to think I know it pretty good. I don't know if I'm like expert level, but I know I can make my way around and down the tracks. So that is true.
How is that? How did that experience, if at all, maybe helped you in your coaching? Because you would go back into coaching.
Mhm.
How did that experience kind of influence you as far as when you came back to coach? Did it influence you in some things you did differently or approach or anything like that?
Yeah, it was on me as a coach. I think it taught me to take a more holistic approach to coaching, understanding that sleep, what we eat, how we train, the intensity in which we do things. It's not just about being good at softball, it's about being good for yourself in life, right? And so, learning how to run, learning how to, fuel my body, learning the importance of sleep, all of those sort of went into what I find to be important now as a head coach, right? And I don't know that I would have necessarily got there as quick as I did if I didn't experience it firsthand. So being responsible for and only myself was entirely different from anything that I had experienced, because everything I had done in sports had always been team based. So you always had people there with you, right? And for
Yeah.
the first time in my life, it was just me, and there was no one there telling me sort of what to do. Like I had to be responsible for everything. So I think it totally prepared and impacted me in how I prioritize things, as well as being accountable to myself.
You moved on to UConn, as you mentioned, and one of the things I always kind of got a kick out of while you were there is you play East Carolina when Courtney Oliver there was the head coach. You played with Courtney for a year. I think it was her freshman year, was your senior year.
Mhm.
She would kind of pick up the baton, if you will. What was that like? Was there any trash talking between the two of you when you all would play? What was that like? And because I mean, this is the Bill Edwards coaching tree. I've talked to Larissa about this. I mean, what is it about that Hofstra tree that produces a lot of coaches and people involved in the game? Obviously, Larissa doing great stuff in Missouri.
Yeah, no. Our Courtney and I have an incredible relationship. We often joke that we had so many similarities. It honestly is like really funny. Totally random things. Like we showed up to one of the first team functions we had, and we were wearing the same T-shirt, right? So it was kind of like this really cool experience to have Courtney, be a part of Courtney's career in her first year and sort of mentor her. But I would say even more than that, we're friends, right? So there's always some, trash talking going on, but at the end of the day, we support each other. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the Hofstra community and about the Hofstra alumni support is that everyone truly supports each other, regardless of where they are, right? We just want to see each other succeed. And if there's anything that we can do for each other along the way, we do it without hesitation because we know that that person is also there for us should we ever need anything. So it's pretty cool.
You're obviously in the Colonial. I've talked to Coach Laporte about this. I've talked to Larissa about this. Obviously, the Colonial, JMU and Hofstra is one of the top rivalries in softball. You know it very well, having played in it. I've talked to both Mickey Dean and Lauren Laporte. They've both admitted that Hofstra was like the target. That helped them build the JMU program because that was the standard that Bill had set, and they were chasing that. And obviously Larissa continued that trend as well when she took over for Bill and stuff like that. And that was a rivalry. I'm curious now that you're taking over and you've seen what JMU has done. They just got to the Women's College World Series with Coach Laporte. I would imagine, that's exciting to sell your players that, hey, you can get to Oklahoma City, look at a conference member, and at the same time, that's a team you're shooting for to kind of get back to the top and, in that rivalry and battle for those conference championships like those two programs have always done.
Yeah, absolutely. There is for sure a level of respect there for what JMU was able to accomplish this year. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And it only helps our conference and elevate our conference. And I think what's cool is that we have a unique opportunity to, to get to where they've been too, right? If they can do it, we can do it too. And I think it's going to be really fun and exciting to see how our conference continues to elevate, and that we have that unique opportunity to continue that sort of like in-conference rivalry with each other, but also support each other. Because at the end of the day, what they did was truly remarkable and something that, we have an opportunity to do as well.
A league that's getting stronger. Delaware is coming off a great year. Jen Steele's building that program up. Depending on what they're based on their RPI. They probably were one of the last teams out. Probably some, based on RPI, normally they would have been in. Probably if it was a normal year, they probably would have been. But this is a league that has history of being a multi-bid league. A lot of times, Hofstra and James. Do you see similarities here where the league could be like the American, for example, where you were at, where that league would be a 3 to 4 bid league, and you're fighting for competition? Can you see that in the Colonial as well?
Oh yeah, I think there's definitely some correlation there between the American and the CAA. I mean, at different years, you have seen multiple bids come out of both conferences. So I do truly believe that that there is some correlation there, and that we can be a multiple bid conference continuing to move forward. And you're right, Delaware has continued to grow with Jen Steele at the helm, and she's going to continue to do good things, right? And again, the more competitive that we can be in conference and with each other, the better for us, for all of us long term, right? And continue to try to make sure that we are a multiple bid conference because we can be.
And it's a league that, Hofstra has hosted in the past. JMU has obviously hosted the NCAA tournament recently. Talk about facilities and what you bring at Hofstra, because I don't know if people realize, and I've said this on the show, Hofstra, when people think Hofstra, they think softball first. Not a lot of schools can say that. There's the great tradition, the history that you've been a part of. It's got to give you a big advantage too when it comes to recruiting and standpoint, that when, hey, you got the Hofstra logo, you're coming in recruiting, they know, hey, this is softball. This is like a big time program here.
Yeah, I do think that is still the case, right? I think Hofstra, is a really unique place that softball is important, and so are academics, and it is a really unique opportunity for student athletes to be able to have. So I do think that I'd like to think we have a little bit of an edge in the Northeast, and I think it's important to get the best Northeast talent in here because that's most of how we had success is with the people that are in our backyard, right? That want Hofstra because Hofstra is a household name in the area and even nationally.
I've asked Larissa this when she was the head coach at Hofstra, and she just said, I just focus what we can control. We're fine traveling in the first few weeks of the season. But I do wonder, do you think softball would look into pushing their season starting a little later? Baseball's been a lot of conversation about that. Do you think softball should consider that, pushing it a few weeks later, so programs like yourself and other programs up in the Northeast and grow the game, not just for your own interest, but just for the game's interest, to grow it and have opportunities we can have more home games for your diehard fan base?
Yeah, it's always an interesting discussion, and I do think that it could be mutually beneficial for everyone if we were able to make that happen, right? I know there are a lot of moving parts to that, but I know that the discussion is being had, and I do think that there are a lot of benefits to being able to move it back, allowing for all of the things you just stated.
Yeah, I mean, I know you just came from the Big Ten. That's where a lot of the conversation is coming from as well, from a baseball standpoint. Their baseball coach has been pushing that over there. So I was curious at softball. And then I know when you were in the American and UConn, that was always a constant topic. We're going to UConn in April, and the threat of a snow out. Because I flew out with UCF when I broadcasted their games to UConn in 2016 when we had the snow out. We only got like one game in.
Oh yeah. And there's nothing. I mean, there's
right.
literally nothing you can do about it, right? It is what it is. So if we were 2 weeks later, it'd be a completely different story, right?
Yeah, but I know that the counter to that is, hey, you're going to play tough teams, you play on the road, and that you're bond with the team. So I'm sure that that's the counter until that, because that's what you can control, right? That's
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk about the last couple of questions now. As you get to know your team here, what are some of the key steps between now and building this to get it back to where you were? I know it's just small steps, but you get to know your players and your personnel. You'll get to learn in the fall and things like that. What are some of the key things that you have to do, you want to see from your players between now and February?
Yeah, I think the key things that we are really going to hit home is talking about the culture piece and the developing of people piece is going to be the biggest part, right? So we're going to need to set the foundation and actually talk about types of behaviors. What does it look like to play with integrity? What does it look like on the field? What does it look like off of the field? And actually break down to give them hard examples of how we're going to set the foundation, right? If we have that conversation with them and we get them to sort of understand and take some ownership for themselves and being a part of that discussion, then I think that's how we lay that foundation. I think from there, when we put the emphasis on the little things and taking care of what we need to do every single day, that is going to sort of allow us to continue rolling forward into the development of skill and the development of the game, right? So I think it starts with the foundation of culture and talking about behaviors and learning to understand how everyone operates. Every single player is different. What they bring to the table is different, and embracing whatever it is they have where they are, and allowing them that space to continue to grow and evolve with where they are is what I plan to sort of build upon and establish in the first few months.
I speak to the history of this program. I could sense it in your voice. You have this joy and pride because you played it. You know what it takes. I believe you've had 6 players have had their numbers retired from the program, which not a lot of softball programs do that. You just had the announcement recently that Lisa Silverdini is going to be inducted into the school's Hall of Fame. That's something that's very common. Just speak to that history in this softball. And as you now as a head coach, how do you make sure you don't put too much pressure on yourself? Because you're an alum. So an alum is always thinking, hey, what's best for the program? But at the same time, there's a process from a coaching standpoint. So how do you balance all that out with this tremendous history and tradition that you probably have, your blood bleeds it?
There is that. I do feel very prideful for my experience and the opportunities that I was given, but I think you do it by taking it one day at a time, right? I can't look too far ahead. I mean, I have a 20,000-foot approach and a view, so that we are organized and prepared, and we've planned, and we have a structure in place. And then when we apply some discipline to that, and some understanding, I think that's truly how we're going to do it. For me personally, I don't. One thing that made me really great as a player is my ability to sort of, have some tunnel vision. So when it is time for practice, or it is time for a game, that I am locked in, right? And so I think that ability to be able to focus on the task at hand in the moment, and not let the periphery sort of get in the way of the opportunity to work with the players day in and day out. That's going to allow me to not be so overwhelmed by everything. But at the end of the day, I am human. So I do envision there to be some challenges as I'm navigating, purchasing equipment and things like that, right? All of this sort of behind the scenes things, I think those are going to be a challenge in navigating it for the first time. But I can't do everything in one day. And what I can do is make a list, stay prepared, stay organized, tackle the list, and then do it again the next day. So that's how I plan to sort of keep the stress level low.
Well, we're excited that you're at the helm here and taking over. I know a lot of people that follow your program for a long time are excited about this move and excited that it's in the family. Congratulations of what you've accomplished to this point, and obviously taking over the program. We wish you the best of luck, and certainly hope to get you back on the show. But again, great. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll talk soon.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. This is an incredible opportunity, and I just really appreciate you being able to collect and share stories, and kind of grow the game yourself. So it's very much appreciated.